Hey everyone, welcome to Rush Fans Rush Roundtable. Today is episode number 253. We're talking the third track off of Snakes and Arrows, Working Them Angels. So today we have myself, Paul, and then I have my brother, definitely from another mother, Paul, on my right, my left, can't tell which difference. I've got David on the other side. Below me, I've got Rob and Alex, who are going to supposedly tell us their expert opinions on this song, but I use that term lightly. So if you like our content, we would greatly appreciate if you could subscribe to our channels. Also, if you want to give us a little tip, you can always send us a tip on Ko-fi, and the links are below in the description. And also remember to check out our sponsors and our merch shop, which Paul is proudly showing that an example of what we have on our merch shop. So before we get into the song discussion, our friend David wants to have a little word for everybody.
Well, Paul, thanks for calling me a friend. I appreciate that. I know this is public, so you have to say that. But no, seriously, we really appreciate everybody that watches the channel. And here a few weeks ago, I was in a local store called Total Wine. I think I must have been buying a bottle of the Macallan or something like that. And all of a sudden, like 2 aisles over, I hear this, and I have my Rush Golden Ale shirt on or something, one of those, and I hear this, "Hey, you're on that YouTube channel, Rush Fans, aren't you?" Or something like, and I went, I'm just kind of shocked, just wasn't expecting to be, recognized. We're not exactly worldwide famous. But anyway, this gal said, she goes, "We watch it all the time. Loved your channel. It's great." And I don't know whether I said thanks or just, like I said, it just took me by surprise, which is difficult to do. But anyway, if you're watching, comment, let us know, say hi to us, that yeah, you were the person that I ran into at Total Wine, and thanks so much for watching, and everybody that participates and comments and likes or just watches and laughs at all of us knuckleheads.
You didn't scream out no autographs and run away, or
No, no, I wasn't asked for an autograph.
They didn't try to take your photo or something.
Nothing
Go
like
all
that. It was
no
just pure
selfies,
appreciation
just
for the
didn't
channel.
go
So
all Sean Penn on them circa 1986.
Thinking of
that
that
would have been
graphic of
cool.
Neil from R40 at the right when the Workin Them Angels intro starts, right before the Anarchist, and on the motorcycle, and it takes off.
Nice.
well. With that, let's go into our song. This is, like I said earlier, track number 3 from Working Them Angels, 4 minutes and 47 seconds of greatness. So far, we talked Far Cry and Armor and Sword, which have interesting introductions to the songs, like intros. This one also has a short intro, but it's catches your attention right away. Dun, 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 dun. Just like that pause. Then it goes into it. Your thoughts on that, gentlemen? Anything?
I'm gonna actually foreshadow our discussion of the live aspect of this song because to me, watching the live video like on YouTube, not that I don't have the DVDs sitting on the shelf from years back, I love that Neil does the count in and then he keeps it going so that he basically just creates that rhythm, just that triple. And the thing that I
Mm-hmm.
think is interesting is that he's doing basically a triplet rhythm, which is one reason that every time you see a transcription of this song, the verses are in 12/8. And one of
Right.
the things in our preparation, I found that Modern Drummer article where Neil talked about the verses being in 3/4. And I just thought it's interesting because I kept thinking, all right, can I count this in 3/4? And it's like he's really playing in 12/8. And then later when Lifeson brings in the strumming aspect that's more consistent, at the end of the verse, it's clearly a 12/8 strum. But as I say, I just love the fact that there's just something about it when I listen to it, even within the last couple of weeks, where I just loved Neil's, like, okay, we want to count this in because G G G A G G G D, but at that point it's basically just the fact that it's like, hi, I'll just come up with a drum part with two sticks because he's Neil, and yes, he's our Neil Peart pro marks. So just saying,
Nice.
just trying to keep it real here.
Yeah, I
Also
see
keep it
Paul's
real
got
too.
them.
And we
Yeah,
don't even play drums.
I know that was a nice touch to bring out the drumsticks from a guitarist. So that's
Yeah.
greatly that's so cool. But you're right. I do when I hear the song, I hear da 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 da, and I find myself counting in my head. One, two,
Yeah.
three, one, two, da da. It's
Or
just
like, yeah, just one triplet, two triplet, one, two, three, four, five. But yeah, it
yeah,
really is that because I mean, any song with the lower numbers in eight has more of that lightness, that dance. I mean, that's why jigs are 6/8s and saltarellos and tarantellos are all, folk dances out of Europe are 6/8 time, 12/8. I mean, it's a blues triplet feel too. So, but it's in three. So
but we hear the da da. We hear it twice, and then he continues on. But then Getty kicks in with the first verse,
yeah.
which goes driving away to the east and into the past. History recedes in my rearview mirror, carried away on a wave of music down a desert road. Oh, do I include that last line? Is it part of the chorus?
Probably
Okay.
no, that's a two
Uh,
verse.
is it part of the of the
it's
verse or the
it's
chorus?
like one line that is not it's not
It's
a
like
pre-chorus, it's not the chorus, but it's
it's a
almost like
transition. It's like
yeah,
a
it's like a
transition.
transition line. So
And it's
Okay, well let's.
italicized on Rush.com, by the way.
there you
It's
go.
what? It's italicized. Okay, so memory humming at the heart of a factory town. So who's going to start the discussion on this first verse?
Yeah, I think travel song, obviously, it's like in the music part is the companion to the travels. And then just his commentary on where he was, yet if we were going autobiographical with this tune a little bit, reflecting on perhaps what he's gone through, and where he's kind of proceeding, where he is mentally in his view journey, because a lot has taken place. They did their tours with paper trails, and he got married, and his life is starting anew. So it's kind of like a nostalgic type of thing. I think we just came up with R30 also. So there's a lot of nostalgia going on here. I feel, my opinion of this particular part. And then, of course, when he addresses this again later on, the story kind of changes a little bit. So we have some history, we have some story, we have music, we have reflection, self-reflection. It's really uh yeah, I love the sentiment of this, the way it begins, the way it feels. Talking about all the rhythm, that sort of like kind of bluesy feel, which is not something we've heard from Rush in a little while. So I think musically it's perhaps going back a little bit into like their stylistic writings of like this bluesy feel. We haven't heard this in a while from these guys. So there's a lot to unpack in this first verse. So that's my starter on this one.
I'll chime in. One of the things that I noticed right away is, and this is a great writing technique, there seems to be almost somewhat of a contradiction, right? He's driving into the past. Very next line, he says, history recedes in the rearview mirror, right? But how I kind of take that is really kind of what you were saying, Rob. There's nostalgia. He's thinking about the past, where he's come from, what he's experienced, you know but yet while he's looking in his rear view mirror and history is receding, that also means he's moving forward into the future, right? So yeah, he's in the past, but also it's not just nostalgia, right? Or he's not mired in all the grief that he experienced. He's just reflecting everything that he learns, but yet he rides along. And of course, I love this, carried on a wave of music down the desert road. uh, Neil wrote the wonderful book Traveling Music, and he always listened to music as he was on the road, especially mostly on his motorcycle. So all these things that he's thinking, experiencing, the whole time there's music in the background that sort of, well, as he said in the subtitle of the book, the soundtrack of his life. And so music was always his companion on his travels as well. So I just like that juxtaposition of being in the past, but history is also receding as he moves on down that road, carried by the music.
Also,
Almost a photo negative of Ghost Rider when you think about it.
mm,
This lonely, long, endless road and constantly drive versus this increasing in tempo as we proceed through the verse, uplifting song. It's like, okay.
And I always love the fact that Neil looked for roads on his
oh
travels,
yeah, the winding
but
road.
the, fewest people,
Yeah.
right? Just so he could experience, whatever country, usually the United States, but Canada, whatever country he was in, he found those roads that were, you know,
Yeah, he
making
was
things.
big on shun piking, sort of escaping the toll roads and that sort of thing. So it was
Mm.
really, big feature in the books of travel for him, especially on motorcycle. But you don't want to hear music when you're on motorcycles because it's very distracting. So
Yeah.
I think he always had a soundtrack in his head because when you're riding on the bike, you have to be
Ah,
right to the road. So
yeah.
that
Then he'll
was
really be working them angels. Exactly.
yeah.
We'll get to that. I don't want to
Well,
get too far ahead.
the one thing that
The-
I was thinking is interesting is that normally, Neil's all about writing lyrics that could be as universal and I don't want to say general. I feel like that almost sounds pejorative, but like I say, universal. But this starts to just grab us as much more autobiographical. But in the
Mhm.
universality of it, it's sort of like how many people can envision themselves driving a car with the radio on or throwing in some kind of tape or CD or MP3 phone, whatever, and then you just it is a time machine. You throw on that old song and you think, I mean, I think of that like one. Buying Somewhere in Time and Seventh Son and like a year and a half ago on CD for the first time. I had the tapes, and it's just like, oh my God, it's high school. So
Yeah. Rob Halford said something similar of Judas Priest. He made the comment that, you listen to a song, you drop a needle on a record, and all of a sudden you're back where you first heard it. Yeah.
Oh, happens all the time.
Yeah, I don't want to do a mic drop on anybody on this panel, but understand that this was in 2007. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
Musically, I've always enjoyed the transition from the verse to that transition and then right into the chorus. That complete, like da, da, but then it kind of gets soft for like I think it's about two measures for when
yeah,
when they say memory humming down the heart of a factory town. It's just Neil playing on the toms, and then it just hits that chorus, right? Just drive, and the chorus goes, "All my life I've been working them angels overtime, riding and driving and living so close to the edge." Working them angels, working them angels, working them angels overtime.
and that
And you,
that that rhythmic shift that you're talking about. I mean, that's
yes,
something they were Neil was talking about in that Modern Drummer issue, saying that they really
yep.
wanted to have that. I mean, it's a certain abrupt change, but it isn't abrupt. Like how awkward is that? It's just literally shifting gear. Okay, motorcycle reference. All
Mic
right,
drop.
fine.
Yeah,
Well, not really mic drop, but it's just like
I know.
paused for people to recognize the idea that he's riding down that desert road and shifts gear, maybe kicks it up a little bit because going
Yeah.
into the 4/4 feel. I mean, 12/8 is still 4/4, but
Mhm.
this time it's just more like punching heaviness at that point and to drive that chorus home, basically. Pun intended, not meant for a joke.
But at the transition between just
Yeah,
it's flawless, but it shows you
yeah.
their genius and how they can do the transition, and it feels normal. It feels natural.
Mm.
I mean, they're shifting time signatures, and I think did Neil mention that in the article how he was
Yeah,
kind of struggling to how to transition from one time signature to the next.
yep. And he mentioned that for one part we'll talk about in a little while, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Any
For-
any words on the meaning of the chorus?
Yeah, I could throw that
Oh,
out there. So the idea for adapting the opening lines of the book, Traveling Music, it was actually Getty's idea. He asked Neil to basically to write a song about it, or use it as a song use it as lyrics for a song. And the story of how the phrase "Working the Angels" came into their vernacular was, quoting Neil. A black couple came up behind us, a large woman in a flowered dress and hat, and her husband, a small, thin man in a suit and tie. He smiled shyly as he gave a pointed finger speech about her driving, saying, "You're giving the angels too much trouble. You're giving the angels too much trouble." From that moment on, Brutus and I used that phrase to each other often in order to describe the way we live on and off our motorcycles, which has continued to be a metaphor for my own life. I don't consider myself reckless or irresponsible, but that certain level of risk always seems worth it for the promised return of excitement and precious experiences. Although I don't really believe in these angels, his quotes, I imagine I would always keep them very busy if I had them. So that's how they got the phrase "Workin Them Angels."
Interesting.
Really speaks to Neil's just passion for life, right? And to keep pushing it.
Yeah, it's a risk
Like,
reward faction, where you take the risk and then there's a reward at the end if you survive. And that's very gratifying, especially when you make, when you're mapping out your destination on a map, on your motorcycle, and you get to the place you're going to go without incident. That's the reward. It's like, it's not about anything more than just the endurance of that trip. And then you get to your little cabin and you have your Macallan and you celebrate that you made it in one piece without anything breaking or motorcycles or bones or anything, So it's a good celebratory notion, this little section too, It's like he's gotten to this point, and it's more celebratory, this, the major key at the beginning, and then the chorus kind of delves into a little bit of the E minorish kind of feel there. So it's like that transition of moods, but still that feeling that was mentioned before that Alex brought up, that, and even Paul saying that the transition of like moving from one time signature to the next and doing it in a smooth way where it feels completely natural. It says a lot about even just the journey, however you want to picture the journey. It could be Neil's or your own or whatever. So universality starts creeping in. So
I'm sure that Rush manager Ray Daniels had a few ulcers along the way when Neil was out riding between shows on tour, right? Like, gosh, let's hope nothing happens to the guy.
Well,
the guy,
as he said, they were shut down at that point.
mm-hmm.
I mean, there was,
but he would have held out for hope.
He was that story during our 40 where he got an infection on his foot, and they were close to having to cancel because he was playing in pain. But that's part of the risk of he was driving out in the rain and got wet. But with that, we can move on to the second verse. So, riding through the range of light to the wounded city, filling my spirit with the wildest wish to fly. Oh, taking that high road to the wounded city. Memory strumming at the heart of a moving picture.
I'll chime in here. Yeah. Riding through the range of light on Rush.com, range of light is capitalized. So I dug into that, and turns out that American naturalist and writer John Muir referred to the Sierra Nevada mountain range as the range of light. So that is the inspiration for that use of words. And the Wounded City, I actually, in digging through that, before I got to my final destination, found a Reddit thread basically with fans arguing what they thought Wounded City meant. If you read Traveling Music from Neil Peart, in verse 5, one of the last chapters of the book, he explains Wounded City is Toronto, and the inspiration for that being at the time of SARS, when they did the SARS stock concert, they put the benefit together, or they were involved in the benefit, I should say. That was the Wounded City by name. So hopefully that ends the debate. It's in the book. But I just love the way there. Thank you. Yes.
I just happen to have a book here on my desk.
So, what a coincidence amongst all those books in the background.
Tourists.
Show you a tour. There are books everywhere.
Books are for tourists.
They are. And we can tour anywhere in the world in a book.
Any other?
And gotta love the line "memory strumming at the heart of moving picture."
Yeah, that's
it's a Rush song, and they're using the phrase "moving picture." Enough said.
Right.
Yeah. That one always catches me when I hear it in the song. It's like it just sounds natural for Getty to say "moving pictures." You get brought back to the album, right? But almost like he did it on purpose. Anything else before we move on to the second chorus, which is similar? I've just realized I might have read the wrong chorus the first time up. Because I said the first one, I said riding and driving and living so close to the edge. This one is I've been working them angels overtime, riding and driving and flying just over the edge. Mm-hmm. Working them angels 3 times overtime. So what's your thoughts on that one?
Well, I'm starting to wonder if we might need to get you a teleprompter. Just saying.
I'm not going to say it. I can go in a direction, but I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. Yeah, keep moving. Any thoughts on that one? Jesus.
Well, he added flying this time.
Yes,
instead of living,
as opposed to living close to the edge. Now he's flying over the edge.
Which
just over
Neil,
the edge.
yeah, Neil usually seems to do that. He kind of elevates from the norm as the song goes on.
But ironically enough,
yes,
Neil doesn't like to fly. We didn't like to fly. As per Getty's book, he absolutely hated flying.
Yep.
So it's kind of ironic he used that line. But I'm sure there's a metaphor.
I was going to say, how many times have we said his lyrics are soaring and all that? So yeah, I'm comfortable with the metaphoric approach on this.
Yeah. And there's, all throughout the song, speaking metaphor, just the idea of the edge. Like I can remember it was Alex or Rob said earlier. He was never irresponsible or reckless, but there's always risk. You're always kind of on that edge, and then that kind of comes about, in another verse here in a minute as well. This idea of the edge.
And usually at this point, Alex would. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
The reckless thing, I'm going to take a little bit of exception to, because in Masked Rider, which is just out of reach. Oh, no, I lied. It's here.
The book's all over the place.
He talks about riding the bike too fast downhill at one point in a reckless manner. And I thought it was either Traveling Music or Roadshow where he mentioned a couple times where they might have been going just a teeny bit too fast through traffic with the music blaring. So
they did have their moments.
Yes. It wasn't a consistent thing, but the events occurred is where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And the idea that he was riding with Brutus at that one point, it's like Brutus got a little reckless.
Right.
Brutus
spent a little time.
Reckless and other things about his life that Neil talked about. He's
Ghost Rider, it's sort of
on the edge sort of guy.
Working Them Angels overtime, yeah. At this point, normally we would expect a awesome Alex Lifeson guitar solo, but no, he breaks out a mandolin. Mandola, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, live in the studio, he became kind of known for playing a mandola. Like by the time Victor was he was recording Victor, which you could think, why a mandola, not a mandolin? I mean, mandolas are about 15% larger than mandolins. Which, if you're a guy who's just over 6 feet tall, you might think, well, a mandolin's dinky. This mandola, I can get my hand around it a little better, and doesn't feel like I'm mashing 8 frets at once. But you look at and I'm going to go back to the live video again. I'm just continually doing that. You look at what he had on the Omega stand, which was, the trademark. It was an octave mandolin with a capo at the 5th fret, which you listen to the studio recording for Workin Them Angels. It does have a sound like it sounds like a smaller body, like it would be a mandola. Granted, obviously, miking techniques are pretty impressive, but whereas, the live thing, I have to assume, and if anyone like Alex Lifeson's watching, feel free to comment below. I have to assume that the octave mandolin was more about, probably would have been easier for maybe someone involved with the production probably said, we can mount this more easily. We can, electrify this more easily, just capo that thing, because at that point it becomes a mandola. Which interestingly, in listening to that more recently, especially with headphones on, I thought, am I hearing a backing track the kind of materialize? Because when he's switching from just cranking out the Les Paul and walking over to the mandolin, it's like I'm hearing a mandolin note before he begins playing. And I'm not knocking, I'm not giving him attitude. This isn't like Tommy Lee or something with, Motley Crue's set starting and like 4 measures later, it's like, oh, sorry. But not that I'm ripping on Motley Crue or Kiss for using a lot of backing tracks, but it's the sort of thing that obviously Rush has used samples, for decades. So if at this point they've eschewed synth samples for vocal and like in this case maybe a mandolin, I have no issue with that myself.
Wouldn't that blow your mind if Alex put a comment about your comment?
I don't know if it'd blow my mind, but it'd be pretty cool if he had something to say. So it's like,
someone with a handle that lurks or something. You'd be like, wait, no, with the blue dot.
Yeah, it's like correct me or affirm what I'm saying. I don't care.
I had no idea. That's what I did in studio back in 2007.
Well, at that point, it's like that's probably Getty who would say, "No, you did this."
Yeah. So, and this song has so many layers. I mean, as far as guitar tracks and mandolin and acoustic guitar strumming and the electric playing over it and all that. That's one of It's one of this song's strengths, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
anyone here is going to debate that. But
Right.
outside the consistent tempo and it's I hate to sound all Chris Farley show about it, but it is such a great driving song because it is a driving melody.
Yeah.
To kind of mix my metaphor.
And it's not a solo. It's an interlude. It's like a bridge
Right.
almost, like a break.
Yeah, I mean,
guess you want to call it.
It's I mean, the way he plays it, it is more like I'm talking earlier, the 12/8, it is more like a fiddle tune, a Celtic tune, a bluegrass tune, and I keep using the word tune, which I usually don't, because he is playing it more as someone would if you're sitting at an Irish music session or if you're playing at a bluegrass session. Yeah, he's assimilating to what you would do with that kind of instrument in your hand, and it fits perfectly because of the way they did structure the rhythm of it. They definitely allowed for the rock on the chorus and the lilt, and I think Neil might have used the term lilt in that Modern Drummer article, saying that he wanted to, push it into the heaviness from the chorus and not have the lilting of the verse.
I think it's good too because Alex was more. He was at a point in his playing where I don't want to do a guitar solo. If I don't want to do a guitar solo, it's not going to be there.
Yeah.
And then that was like, I guess, a potential disappointment to the fans. Like, they're expecting a guitar solo, and then he's whipping out a mandolin. And then going to Tommy Lee, if they put him in a harness, had him like play the mandolin solo upside down.
Oh, there you go.
That probably
over
would be
the
really cool.
audience. Yeah.
No one would expect that, so that'd be kind of nice. Working those angels, right?
Gyroscopic lurks
in a harness.
Something tell me Neil wouldn't go for that, but anyway, that's just me.
But it's funny because even Booge was saying, he agreed with Alex when he told him that this doesn't need a guitar solo. Just what I'm thinking of is this folky. So yeah, I totally agree. And he was totally on board with that. Even in the studio, they weren't even debating it. So
and I think they even used Celtic as an adjective there, saying that was the feel they were going for.
Yeah, and I like the fact that Alex could have recreated that sound live, with effects and things, but he did it with the instrument, and what's nice. And as far as I was going to say something about the samples and things that Rush has been known for using, they've never used them to replace their own playing, or something that they could never do. It was just
accented.
All of the things that they had written in the song. I remember way back, early on, they wanted to play or write songs that could be played live, and like the Bell Break and Closer to the Heart was there, so Alex could switch guitars back then.
Yeah,
that's right. Before stand, but then as they got more sophisticated and had more equipment and things like that, they just couldn't do it the same way. So I mean, it's it's an orchestra, so but those samples never ever replaced their own playing or filled in for something they could no longer do.
Right. And interesting that you bring that up as far as the percussion that allows the shift. Neil purposely put in that bass hit, that double bass kick at the end of this interlude for a very intentional transition back into the verses.
Right. Yeah. So then we'll go to the third verse and final verse. It goes, driving down the razor's edge between the past and the future. Turn up the music and smile. Get carried away on the songs and stories of vanished times. Memories strumming at the heart of an English winter. Memories beating at the heart of an African village.
Well, not to be annoying, but I think you said strumming, not drumming, which is ironic.
Did I say strumming?
You
Memory
might have,
drumming.
But who cares?
Oh my gosh, I can't read all of a sudden. What the heck? Memory drumming at the heart of an English, right? Neil, drumming. And
the fact that you actually do play drums.
Well, we're talking about the mandolin strumming.
I know I know it's a long mandolin discussion.
It's very Cheech and Chong too, right there. It's cool. Strumming, it's all the same thing, man.
Dave here. Yeah. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this final verse?
Dave's not here, man.
He's not. Actually, David is here. David, do you have any thoughts?
David is here.
I will share them now.
What a segue.
I have to tell you what Ryan Murphy sent me the other day. It was horrible, but it had to do with my name. Anyway, another story. So anyway, just a few notes that I made on this. So he's driving between the past and the future on a razor's edge. If I can, I can't help myself. I have a degree in philosophy, so I'm going to kind of wax philosophical a little bit. So I get the sense that there's a past that is still with him, right, on his way to the future. But what is the razor's edge? And I thought of a couple possible things, and it could be either both or neither, as far as that goes. One, a razor is thin, right? So uh, the now or the present is this thin line uh, that's here, but then gone constantly, right? But yet the now is always where we are between the past and the future. And then, secondly, a razor is also sharp and dangerous, right? As the choruses indicate, he's pushing life to the edge, pushing himself. So the present is this thing we just don't escape. We can't escape. It's the razor's edge, and you never know which way it's going to go, if you're going to be able to control what happens. But you just turn up the music and smile and get carried away by the songs and stories of vanished times. So again, kind of that very legitimate nostalgia, what we were talking about earlier on in the episode about, hearing an old song and remembering where we were, where it came from, what it meant to us, what we were doing at the time, who we were with, whatever, that may be. And then, of course, then the italicized lines are some of those memories for him that the music, it's just a brilliant verse. I mean, I remember the first time that I heard it, I replayed that again and again and again, what it means to be between the past and the future on a razor's edge. It's a precarious place to be. And although this is like way past, obviously, vapor trails and all of those, horrid, tragic events that he experienced, nonetheless, he still thinks of life, in that way, because that's what life taught him to do, perhaps. It's a great verse. Great verse.
Any thoughts on the last two lines of that verse? Memory drumming at the heart of an English winter, and memories beating at the heart of an African village. I have
Drumming, you bastard.
Well, we
I have
mentioned it was
ideas.
that there is an autobiographical slant to this. So,
Yep.
Yeah.
English Winter, you can take it as far back as his teens when he was, wasn't it late teens when he was in England?
You're
Yep.
20-ish.
And then-
yeah.
He was
18, I think.
late teens. Was in England for what, that 18 months or so, trying to break into
Yep.
the music industry. Yep.
And this
And
Saturday's,
the other one?
this Saturday's Professor's Pen actually covers that on our Instagram channel.
Oh, there you go.
Pen by me. But
And that
being
last
said-
one?
And then
That's
African Village, or the African Village. So we've got the Master Rider right here.
One of the things I love about this instrumentally is the fact that when Getty sings memory drumming at the heart of an English winter, Neil lays back on the drums a little bit as those lyrics go through. And then right after Getty sings English winter, Neil kicks in, not really a drum fill, but more of an intense, working the dynamics, not so much angels, but dynamics in his drumming. He obviously brings in some toms that let you know call and response. And then, that's, after English winter, before African village, a main characteristic of African music is call and response drumming. So it's almost like Neil really, orchestrated that out himself. Weird to think of, but, it must be the case. We've lost Dave.
He's working on
Your
it.
thoughts
Dave's not
were
here.
He's going for a prop. He's
Your-
going for a
your-
prop.
your thoughts were so mind blowing. He had to walk away. He was just like,
I believe it.
the philosopher's mind's been blown. I gotta
Actually, I
walk.
think it'd be mind blowing if he was knocking literally on your door, so that we did wind up turning into the Dave's not here, and then he pops up in
Yeah.
your panel,
Like,
and it's
No,
like,
I just
wow.
thought that there is a book,
could
and I
count
thought
as a
it was
quick.
over there, and it's not over there. So now I'm freaking out, wondering where it is. That Kevin J. Anderson and Neil wrote together called Drum Beats,
Mhm.
and it was based on a story loosely based on Neil's experiences when he was in biking through Africa.
Cool.
So I was going to just say, hey, you read this book; it's a cool book.
And this goes into the final chorus, which is basically a repeat, I think, of the first one. I've been working them angels overtime, riding and driving and living so close to the edge. And he repeats, working them angels several times towards the end of the song. So
One thing that Getty does throw in vocally towards the end that I really like is kind of his trademark whoa whoa. kind of
Mhm.
thing. I really like how melodic that vocal is. I'm a sucker every time he does it.
But it's
Seriously.
not overpowering. It's
No.
more like
Mhm.
almost in the background.
Well, that's
Yeah.
yeah, like they started doing with jettisoning the synths for Vapor Trails. More, not just lots of guitar overdubs, but more vocal overdubs filling in for synths. So they just
Right.
Tesfereco
they
had
kept
that
it
too,
going.
to a
Yeah.
degree. Yeah, Tesfereco. Yep.
Any
The
final
rest of
thoughts on the
Soundscape
song
is Rider.
itself?
Tell me.
I had
So,
one thought.
oh,
You know,
David, you had a
during,
thought? Go figure.
I did.
Hmm.
Uh,
Interesting.
may not be a good one, but something I never thought of before when we were talking. Let's go back to the mandolin or the mandola.
Yes.
Or
And we
both.
talked a little bit how this album kind of brings back their bluesy roots and things like that. Kind of almost in some ways see what agree with me, disagree with me. There's some more of their old Zeppelin-esque roots and influences, perhaps, on this record.
Yeah.
On
Yeah.
the record itself, yeah, I could see
Yeah,
that.
I mean, and definitely, I think in this particular song, um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
like I said,
John Paul
it was
Jones did
a
play
thought,
mandolin on some
Mhm.
Zeppelin action. So, I mean,
right?
obviously in their early career as 20 somethings, they didn't have a lot of money. So they just had to, rock the house. But at that point, towards, by 2007, it's like, hey, JPJ did that. I'll do that too.
Well, even later with Hope,
Mm,
channeling a little bit of Bron-Y-Aur, from
yeah.
Yeah,
Graffiti.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
I
So I
I
got
did
actually
it.
one.
never thought about that till this discussion, but now I'm
Hmm.
going to go back and listen to the album with that in mind.
So this song was played live. I looked it up about 195 times between the Six Narrows tour, obviously, and Time Machine tour. I was lucky enough to see it on the Time Machine tour, which was pretty cool. Um, and there's also artwork. Hugh Syme really outdid himself with some of the artwork on this album on the inner sleeve, because we all know the outside, the cover wasn't Mr. Syme, but so we're sharing here a picture from the inner album cover for Workin Them Angels.
Hmm.
This lovely gentleman here tightening some bolts. He's got angel wings on his
Obviously, in a
back,
factory town.
mhm.
right? He's the hard worker and from the factory town. But apparently, and I wasn't aware of this until we prepped for this episode, is that is based on an actual photograph.
Hmm. Which I suppose, let me make sure I can share that for the people too, since I happen to have it kicking around here. There it is. So
On
yes,
a
just
There we go.
without my desktop's trying to flip around on me. So yeah, just without the wings. This was by Louis Hine, a photographer who born in the 1870s, died in 1940.
For some reason, Mr. Kelly seems to have frozen. I'm not exactly sure why.
I left. Alex freezes. What's going on?
Oh,
All
working
right,
those
so
Cyber Angels.
Listen, what's
this
next? Listen, if Getty and Alex knock on my door,
so this
it's
image,
over.
this image is called Powerhouse Mechanic Working on Steam Pump, and it was taken in 1920. And in 20th century, children made up a large portion of the industrial workforce in the United States, and Hine found in photography his way of denouncing the evils of child labor, as well as working conditions in industries, public health issues, and discrimination against minorities.
Wow.
So, Alex,
That,
since you froze, I
You're back.
jumped
yeah.
into that quick description. So,
Okay. That got weird for a second because I'm like, where'd you guys go? But no,
Here he
yeah,
comes to save
one
the day.
one of his big one of I mean, Hine was hired to photograph child labor, and he was instrumental in getting that aspect of the New Deal created, as far as making sure that 10-year-olds weren't operating machinery for 12 hours a day, which he, had many photos of. But yeah, at that point, he was photographing the worker, just the idea that, the person is driving the machine. And so, I mean, yeah, there's much that can be said about that, and we're not here to turn this into a photography channel or into a discussion about New Deal. But I mean, the when he died, his negatives and prints went to one organization. When they folded, they offered it to the Modern Museum, or Museum of Modern Art in New York. They said we don't want it. The George Eastman House in Rochester, New York, took it because that's photography central kind of. So literally that print and those negatives are like 3 miles that way from me. But which I thought about actually going there to ask them about that. I had sent a message to Hugh Syme's website because I'm thinking, hey, can you guys say any more? But yeah, I didn't expect a response. Didn't get one. So life goes on.
It's cool to know that he based the artwork on an actual photograph, which I wasn't aware of.
Well, and that's the thing I thought was interesting, is that it's such a distinct, like some of these first few songs on this album, to me, with that photograph in mind, my thought was it the band that noticed it? Did Neil think of it? Was it Hugh Syme that came up with it, or came up with the idea of using it, I should say? That's one thing I would wonder. So if any Gettys or Alexes could want to type in if they're watching, but the idea there that how did they come up with it? Because as I say, I feel like there's a theme on these first few albums that does speak to, it's not the world that they thought they'd inherit. And there's stuff that I would say about next week, which I'm not going to say now, but I feel like this reaches forward to the next song too. So there's just kind of this overarching, acknowledgement of the plight of humans, or the power of humans, which obviously is one of Neil's big aspects, is, the strength of the human and and what we have available to us, when we're able, when we're, et cetera. I'm going to stop talking because I feel like I'm dominating too much, and I'm just
all good.
Paranoid that I'll like disappear and show up in like New Brunswick or something, which is fine. I've never been there.
I do have one more piece of artwork I do want to share, and
Sounds
that
good.
would be this artwork, which is currently being sported by a member of this panel.
Who could it be?
So
I'm not sure. I'm not really sure who it is. But yeah, I've got Workin that part of the Workin Them Angels, and I blended it with the Far Cry picture from the album. Workin Them Angels kind of always, struck a chord with me. I've had stuff happen in my life, and sometimes we all feel like we've been working those angels overtime. So I just talking to my tattoo artist a couple of years ago, and when I saw that picture, and he went, "Ooh, I like that. I know what I can do with this, and I can blend it with the Far Cry one." And I went, "How better?" Sold.
Nice. And now you know that.
Take my money.
Now you know the image is over a century old.
Now I can actually tell the story behind the image, which is kind of cool. So
it's also to be found in the Taschen book for Louis Hines Photography. Taschen is a German company that does publish many photography books. Some of them are dinky, but they're insanely thick. So it's the sort of thing where, you could lay down like $20, $15-20 and get the super monster thick book. And the title of that is, well, I lost it, but because I got kind of thrown off by the fact that I was vaulted into no person's land. Powerhouse Mechanic Working on Steel Pump, because why have a succinct title? But the Powerhouse Mechanic Working on Steampunk 1920, Steam Pump, not Steampunk, is the cover of Louis Hine book that you can easily order from Amazon or Taschen. Not that I'm trying to shill for Amazon and Taschen. If anything, I should shill for our merchandise. But
that's right.
That being said, do we have any final thoughts on this awesome song from Snakes and Arrows before we wrap it up? I mean,
just that I loved it the first time that I heard it. Became one of my instant favorites.
Yep. It's got that hook to it. It's just, it's not overly complicated, but it just sounds fantastic. With that, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us for this discussion. If you like our contact,
whatever we do here,
I'll get through this. I swear. If you like our content, that's the French.
Hit us on Ko-fi. We'll get Paul a teleprompter.
Hey, yeah, but please subscribe to our channels. We really appreciate the love. Feel free to comment. Tell us what you think about this song. Give us a shout out. If you're the one that saw David in Texas and, awesome, leave a comment. Hi. And so stay tuned. Next week, we're going to keep going with the Snakes and Arrows discussion. Until then, Talk to you later. Thanks.
Thanks.